This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 2410, Who Does Your Anger Really Hurt? By Allison Carmen of AllisonCarmen.com, and I'm Justin Malik. Welcome back to a Sunday bonus episode where I give you a little extra content from a podcast in our network that I think will also help you optimize your life. And today's comes from Optimal Relationships Daily, and from an author regularly featured here on this show, Allison Carmen. So with that, here's Greg with a post and commentary for you as we optimize your life.
Who Does Your Anger Really Hurt? By Allison Carmen of AllisonCarmen.com. Quote, if your house is on fire, the most urgent thing to do is go back and try to put out the fire, not to run after the person you believe to be the arsonist. If you run after the person you suspect has burned your house will burn down while you are chasing him or her. That is not wise. You must go back and put the fire out. So when you are angry, if you continue to interact with or argue with the other person, if you try to punish her, you are acting exactly like someone who runs after the arsonist while everything goes up in flames. That's by Thich Nhat Hanh from Anger. My client, whom I'll call Anne, called me the other day. She has a tense relationship with her sister-in-law and was very upset when her sister-in-law came to her house a few days earlier with her children, ate dinner, and left without saying thank you or goodbye. Anne told me that she felt so angry she did not sleep well that night and kept thinking about ways to confront her sister-in-law. She was so angry by the next afternoon that she had an acid reflux attack and had to take some medication. That night she spoke to her husband about it and she could not sleep again. I was speaking with her a full 2 days after the incident. As Anne went over the story with me, she told me that she was more angry about the incident today than when it had first happened. All she wanted to do was yell at her sister-in-law and then never speak with her again. When she was done speaking, I acknowledged the pain that she was feeling. I then read to her the quote from Thich Nhat Hanh reprinted above. Let's stop chasing your sister-in-law for a moment, I said. Let's go back to your breath to cool your own anger. Let's sit and just breathe and slow it down. Anne resisted at first and tried to keep telling me about her horrible sister-in-law, but we eventually sat for 20 minutes breathing and saying nothing. As she calmed down, Anne said, "You know, my anger was making me feel sick, and after breathing quietly for 20 minutes, I feel a bit better. I also just realized that I'm not as angry as I am hurt. My sister-in-law didn't appreciate the fact that I spent half the day making that dinner. She never really appreciates me." I acknowledged her realization and asked her to sit with it more for a few days, but not to call her sister-in-law until we spoke again. Before Anne left, I read another Thich Nhat Hanh passage in which he asked his readers to attempt to understand the situation of the person who had made them angry, and in this way, transform anger into compassion. Anne listened thoughtfully. Anne called me a few days later and told me that after breathing and quieting her mind for 20 minutes a day and thinking about the Thich Nhat Hanh passage about understanding, she did not feel angry anymore. She realized her sister-in-law was probably sleep-deprived from her baby waking up at night and remembered that her other 2 children were very cranky when they were at Anne's house too. It was wrong that her sister-in-law had left the house without saying thank you or goodbye, but Anne said she understood what it was like to feel overwhelmed with young children. Anne indicated that she would have a conversation with her sister-in-law about the incident, but she would also be there for her sister-in-law to discuss what she was going through with her children. My client also decided to take care of herself by not inviting her sister-in-law and her family over for dinner again for a while. They would all meet out at a restaurant instead, so Anne could remain compassionate and understanding and not feel taken advantage of. Of course, we're all faced with similar situations every day that can make us angry, but I wonder how much of our suffering would dissipate if we took care to cool our anger first and then tried to cultivate more understanding towards others. By caring for our anger before we react to another person's behavior, we can see the truth of what we feel and lessen our own internal suffering. Then, through understanding, we can give up the act of declaring the other person right or wrong and instead explore how that person might feel. Doing this allows us to stand in our antagonist's shoes, and, although we might not agree with his or her position, doing so cools our anger and makes room for the insight we need to resolve problems. Cooling and understanding. Maybe these two practices can be the key to letting go of our anger and finding a more peaceful and harmonious life with the ones around us. Just maybe. You just listened to the post titled, "Who Does Your Anger Really Hurt?" by Allison Carmen of AllisonCarmen.com. We've talked a lot on here about how solving many of our problems, anger included, takes time. But, that doesn't mean we should throw our arms up and not try to check in with ourselves in the heat of the moment as well. Taking steps like mindfully checking in on ourselves in the heat of anger will add up to long-term change. And it starts now. It starts in whatever moment you choose it to. So with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. I hope this episode helped you start this week off on an inspiring note. I will see you tomorrow with a post on dealing with losses, where your optimal life awaits.